Hi, I'm Amy,
I'm Simona.
and today we'll be talking about the Netflix original movie The Dig, starring I can't pronounce his name. Can you say it?
Is it Ralph? I never know if it's Fiends or Fines.
I don't know. It's
It is
we
Ralph
could
Fiennes.
it is Ralph
Fiennes.
Fiennes. Okay.
Okay.
I don't know.
I should have left you guys hanging the entire episode.
Cool. Look at me with casting knowledge. And it is about the true story of the now I can't remember the name of the dig or the find
Sudden Who.
Sutton Hoo find in England, and it was interesting. So let's discuss. What did you think, Simona?
Well, I really enjoyed it. I especially enjoyed, I like looked up just some brief facts about the Sudden Hoo dig in general, just for those who may not be familiar. So Sudden Hoo is the site of two early medieval grave sites that date from the 6th to the 7th centuries. And the film, it first covered in 1938, 1939. And most of the objects that they found are in the British Museum, but it's most well known for finding this Anglo-Saxon ship measuring 27 meters or 88.6 feet. And I just looked up a lot of images of other artifacts that were found, and they're absolutely gorgeous. There's like a gold shoulder clasp that was found. Also, another famous one is a Sudden Hoo helmet. And I found a picture of like the replica that was made of it. I really enjoyed the film. I mean, obviously, my favorite part is when Basil Brown, who's the amateur archaeologist who's hired by Mrs. Pretty, who's the woman that owns the land that these large mounds are on, basically. And I loved the part when he acknowledges that the mound that she first wanted to dig up, because she had a feeling about it, is actually the one they should dig up. I really loved that part because he was sort of acknowledging, you had the right call, we're going to look there. And then he ends up finding the ship. And I loved that part. I loved the excitement of digging up the ground, of finding all the artifacts, of uncovering basically a part of British history, is the part that I really enjoyed, and how the artifacts changed their opinion of the Anglo-Saxons who were, and even the supposed Dark Ages, as it was called, that it wasn't a period of darkness, it was a period of discovery of art, the flourishing of art, and how a people that was assumed to be solely these like marauding, treasure hunters had art, had culture. And really looking at the artifacts, because I decided to go to the British Museum and I did a virtual tour of it. They're gorgeous and they're so intricate. In fact, many of the jewelry that they found, modern jewelry can't replicate it. They don't know how they were made, which is just another, like, what I appreciated about this is that it shows, and I think this was mentioned in the drama, that people of the past have always been people. It's just the times that have changed, but what makes us fundamentally human hasn't. And it's so that's what I really enjoyed. I enjoyed the historical aspect, the uncovering of these treasures. Yeah, so that was probably the part I enjoyed the most. It is definitely a great movie, with wonderful characters, but that's the part that really, got me engaged, when they're starting to slowly uncover more and more of the ship. They're finding more treasures. And yeah, and sort of the infighting that occurs between the local Ipswich, is that
Yeah,
what
Ipswich Museum.
and the British Museum, like the fight over who gets
Mhm.
display these finds, who gets the credit for it. And unfortunately, with Mr. Basil Brown, he was never really acknowledged as he should have been. And it wasn't until
Right.
much later that his role in excavating the site and uncovering these artifacts was really acknowledged and giving the credit that he deserved. And there was also a lot of classism in that as well, and also the fact that he wasn't a true archaeologist. But
And just as an anthropology major who never ever went on a dig because I don't like dirt and I'm impatient, so it wouldn't have been the career path for me. They did not I don't know if they just didn't show it, but I didn't see it in any of the historical pictures either, and it was kind of stunning to me. Like, they grid out archaeological sites so that they can place exactly where things were found, and like none of that was happening. And it was like, even to my impatient, crazy non-archaeologist mind, was like, what are they even doing?
and was that standard practice? Should that have been standard practice at that time, or did
It might not have. It might have, like,
okay.
I don't know exactly when the practice of, like, they make like string grids over everything, and everything's numbered, and then they can plot out where everything was found to recreate.
Oh, okay, I see. Yes. All right.
So it was just funny to me, like, watching this happen. And it was just like, they're not doing this correctly, but in their time I'm sure they were. But
Yeah.
um I liked the movie. I will not say I thought it was great, though. I had some problems, not with the archaeology, though. That would be super shallow. um but I thought, like, they focused so much on these fictional love issues that weren't there, or if they were not reported. And um I felt like that time could have been better used, either not having, like, cutting movie time, or developing things that were actually true, and like the whole Mrs. Pretty's, was it cousin,
Yes.
was not real. He was not like a real person, and there's no evidence to suggest that Mr. Pigott was gay. and
Yeah.
Mrs. Pigott, like, went off and, like, went her separate ways. I mean, they might have gotten a divorce. I didn't honestly delve into their
They
life.
never, I don't believe, I'm trying to think because I looked up these figures, because the key thing is this is based on a novel.
Right.
Yeah. There were people that took issue with the portrayal of the lead archaeologist from the British Museum, because they were saying that the drama within the drama that occurs between Mr. Brown and the gentleman who's the head archaeologist was not really there. I think the two of them worked very professionally together. Like, I think family took issue with the way they were portrayed.
Well, that being said,
Yeah.
I'm sorry I interrupted. I'm non-mannered today. Do you want to go on?
No, basically,
Okay.
just they took issue with it.
Yeah. I mean, that being said, though, he wasn't represented in Who Found This. And it does seem like Mrs. Pretty, and that name, I love that name. Man, Mrs. Pretty. Um, but there's, like, I think that Miss Pretty did say, that she wanted him recognized, and he wasn't. So, if it wasn't him saying, then, like, put my name on this, it's like, it's curious that he didn't have the generosity of spirit to tell them to go ahead. And I also like there were I understand that it was probably like Peggy or Margaret Piggott. Um, I understand it was probably a way to represent the times with women working in archaeology.
Mhm.
That she like was only called there for her being small and
Mhm.
not ruining the site, so that this heavier guy could direct her. um but also, why, like, I don't know if she was an like, these are the things that I plan to research more. The Piggotts in general, whether she was her own, like, an archaeologist in her own right after that, um and what happened to her, and also the clothing styles of the 1940s, because what was with her midriff? Why do they think that Piggott would have like an inch and a half of skin showing on a dig?
I don't know. Honestly, I found that odd too, because this is like the late 30s. And even because I think also, just as an aside note, that with the perception of the 20s in general was that people like women threw modesty to the wind, so
Mm-hmm.
which many historical costume or people who know about that period say that's not really true. I think what we
Right.
think of the 20s in general is a product of maybe Hollywood. Most women, even at that time, even though some of the hemlines were adjusted, they still would have dressed pretty modestly. So seeing her with the midriff and even her skirt hiked up, I understand she was,
Mm-hmm.
but then she could have worn pants.
Well, she didn't. They pulled her from Holiday. That was like
Yeah,
those that I get that she's wearing a skirt, because it wasn't really appropriate to wear
yeah,
pants.
yeah.
Um, but like just like wandering around with some of her belly out, and like I'm not a prude. Like if she was wearing that nowadays, I'd be like, cute top. But like for the times, it seems that they're casting aspersions on her character, which then if you're thinking that way, if you're thinking, well, maybe she's a hussy, you know that she does go, and like we don't know what happens with her and fictional cousin dude. um like, what was that, to foreshadow that she was going to be a loose woman?
No, I think it was to basically show that she is someone fighting against convention. That's how I took it. Because even when she first goes on the dig, she's extremely appreciative. And then she says, okay, so you're telling me the only reason why I'm here is because I'm light enough. Okay. Her as trying to desperately prove that I'm more than just a pretty face. I have brains and I can do things. And I kind of saw her fashion choice as a way to sort of put her apart,
Hmm.
that she is unconventional, that she's fighting against what people assume a woman should be. She's desperate for passion because obviously, like the whole thing with her husband, I mean, I don't know whether I'm getting really good at figuring out sugar coating or if it's just really obvious. But like that whole scene where her husband's like, oh, so can you take this bed and I'll take this bed, and I was like, gay. So I was like, okay. And little by little, I was like, okay, he's gay. Like he didn't want to be in this marriage. It probably, she's a beard and she's desperate for like passion and whatever. Like even when she opens up her bathrobe, which is, what do you mean if you see me like this? And like
Right.
closes the
And he
bathroom,
like
like
shrieked. Yeah.
yeah, and darts out of there faster than anything. So that's what I was thought they were going with her fashion choices.
Hmm.
That's what I thought they were sort of leaning towards. Because when you see Mrs. Pretty, also there are different social classes. Mrs. Pretty is from a very wealthy upbringing.
Right.
She's very demure in her fashion choices for the most part. So that's
Right.
what I kind of saw it as, like a way to contrast the two women.
Mhm.
That's how I read it. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I just like I also like I don't know how long they were meant to have been married. I mean, they were on holiday, so
mhm.
maybe they were on their honeymoon.
Yeah, that's
but
what I'm assuming.
like it it seems like she wouldn't have been that surprised. like when she flashed him and he ran away. Like I would, and then, like at first I'd be like, okay, well, there's something up with that, but and and then maybe the coin would drop about, him being gay. But I it just seemed like she shouldn't have been that shocked. Like, and he, like every time she's like mystified. Like,
Yeah, it's,
probably had a week of that at least.
well, the only way I could probably look at it is if maybe, I mean, one would assume, I don't know how long their courtship was. At that time, especially, it's not,
Right.
they would have said, oh, we're casually dating and we're going to discover each other and then figure out whether or not this is marriage material. So one would assume maybe they had a brief courtship. I almost thought that it was a marriage of not arrangement or convenience. Like I didn't get the feeling that there was love between them. I got, I don't know. That's not how I interpreted it. But maybe
Mhm.
married for a very brief period. Maybe he could have used the excuse, I don't want to get intimate with you.
Before marriage. Yeah.
Yeah, until also even after marriage, like maybe until you're ready, like I get the feeling that they're more like strangers. Like how long have they known each other before they were engaged and then eventually married? So
Mhm.
he could have relied on the excuse, I want you to get comfortable with me before we do anything. And I mean, I don't know what the time was like in the 30s between people, but I mean, you get the feeling that
They
even,
were human.
yeah, well, well, I get the feeling that even marital relations, what am I trying? I don't even know what I'm trying to say right now, but maybe even between married people, maybe certain things would have not has been as open or as discussed. So maybe that
Right.
would explain why she's still reacting with surprise. Like that's how I can sort of brush away, like, well, don't you, like, how long have you been, like, you're like, it's true, like, why you're surprised, but that's how I kind of interpret it.
Mhm. It's as good
Yeah.
an assessment as any. I just
Yeah.
I just had trouble with, the way, like, every time she was like shocked anew. Like, and it's not as if, like, it's not as if gay people didn't exist then, and like whether or not she jumped to that assumption, maybe not, but even if she did, like, keep chaste for her marriage and all of this stuff, and he courted her saying, I want us to be friends, I don't want to, like, I will not take liberties with your person.
Mhm.
You would expect that the honeymoon, they would want to take liberties with each other's person.
Yeah, yeah, I don't know. I'm also thinking about, other cultures as well, where even like within married couples, like, yes, you're expected, you're having sex, but it's more like you're having sex for children. I was even thinking, oh, I can't remember that movie. A classic Hollywood movie where it's about like the teen angst. And when I remember it, I'll mention it again. And there's a scene where the young daughter, she's sort of awakening to her sexuality and she's having these feelings. And the mother says, even I, give in to your father every once in a while. It's not that I really want to, but men are different from us, you know. And the daughter's looking at her like, and it's not good for a woman to have those feelings anyway.
Mhm.
So I'm not saying every couple was like
Right.
that, but I think that may have been the dominant sort of theory where it's like where women have sex, it's because, we need to have children. Like even Queen Victoria
Mhm.
said to women, look up at the ceiling and think of England.
Right.
So I think even
Pleasure
at
of
that
a
time,
woman was not actually, like,
yeah,
necessary to have a kid.
yeah.
So
So I wouldn't be surprised if even at this time within British society, that's probably still would have been the case. I'm just trying to
right.
make
No, I get it.
out.
I get it.
Yeah. But yeah, like I even like the way her husband with the other gentleman, and I didn't bother writing down their names, but the other gentleman with whom he has an
Bigot and guy.
obligation. Yeah, and then they go off together, and almost like he can't hide his excitement. He's practically running to the car.
Mm-hmm.
And when you think of the times, how, they couldn't be open with their like, oh yes, I love men and we're gonna, run off together. But I like how she gives this look where she's like, I'm not stupid. I think at that
Mm-hmm.
realizes it, but there's nothing she can do about it anyway, unless she really wants to expose him to ridicule
Mm-hmm.
and have him like, she's not gonna say anything.
Right. I'd be mad.
Well, no, also you can see that eventually she throws herself into finding things. I love the moment when she's the first one to uncover like a piece of jewelry. And I think
Right.
that earns her the respect of the other people, which I think she had. I think with the exception of Mr. Hoity-Toity, leader of the British Museum, I think the other men in the dig had respect for her. That's how I saw,
Mhm.
the way they were praising her and
Right.
yeah, so I love that moment where she got to prove herself that I'm capable of doing this.
Right.
Um, but yeah, but I kind of wanted to fast forward certain points. It was very long. Probably not at some points I was my attention was lagging. I did. It's still a good film, but I think certain aspects were played up. I don't know why. I don't know how the novel is. But I think if it were a purely sort of not
Biopic or something.
yeah, I wonder if people also would have lost interest in it. But there were moments I enjoyed. I loved the relationship between Mrs. Pretty and her son.
Mhm.
Spoiler warning, I loved the ending. It's so beautiful when he's lying down with her in the ship.
Yeah. Oh man, that was
Yes.
terrible.
I was fighting the urge not to cry.
That was a little bit traumatic.
Yeah, when he's giving her like that, because I was thinking of when Mr. Brown tells the son, how the ship most likely belonged to a king, and
Mhm.
for the send off that they would have given him, and that
Right.
doing for his mom, he's giving her a Viking or a send off. She's this queen, says, we're navigating to the stars, and the way he's talking to her, like he's trying to comfort her because he feels the pressure as a young boy. Well, I'm the quote unquote man of the house. I should be taking care of her.
Mhm.
The best that I can do for you. I'm going to give you this queenly send off. And
Mhm.
it's such a beautiful scene in the movie. And it's so touching. And Basil Brown's just like standing in the back watching this, and they're lying. At first, I thought, oh my God, they're in the ship. Are they going to damage the ship? I was like,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I know.
But it's a really beautiful moment.
Yeah.
And I thought it was a great way to sort of end the film, where like the mother and son are having this moment together. It was very beautiful. So there are beautiful moments. There are moments where I'm like, "Ugh, okay, I kind of get it.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
just let's fast forward this part a bit. I did like how the war was discussed, how, every once in a while there's these signs, the planes flying overhead,
Right.
that crashes into the water and dies because they're using these older planes. The people,
Mhm.
the blackout, for the windows, which I think at a certain point was mandatory. You had to black out your windows.
Mhm.
Um, and basically the fear, the uncertainty, all these
Mhm.
and having to see the men and their families being sent off to war.
Right.
World War II, there were a lot of casualties. Most would probably never even return. So there
Right.
was this uncertainty, and I felt it too. Like I felt the anxiety, especially as a man, where you're torn. This is your duty, but at the same time, if you're fearful, you almost can't show it.
Mhm. And it was interesting to me because even though I knew my grandmother was the only person in her immediate family to make it out of the Holocaust, and
Mhm.
she made it out because she was like contracted to be like a domestic, that's what they called them. So
Mhm.
people would like pay, they would sponsor people to come to wherever to take care of their kids. And so she went from Germany, where her family was like everything they owned was taken, and and like her family was just about to be taken, And then she goes to England where they're having air raids. And, she got there in 1940. And so she talks about like air raids, and she talked about those things. And like, I never kind of put it together that she left like one war zone for another until I saw it. Like, I don't know why. I really never, I guess because it seemed so peaceful compared to, being sent to concentration camps. But, it was just trauma on top of trauma.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there was a part of her that was happy to have escaped one horror, but sort of like out of the frying pan into the fire.
Right.
Kind of deal where now you have to experience these bombings, and London, as we know, was heavily bombed. A lot of casualties. Many families sent their children to the countryside, if you could, to sort of escape the bombing.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, and you think about it, how I'm sure Europe was almost just recovering from World War I, and they went into World War II.
Right.
World War I was extremely devastating because it changed how warfare was engaged. You had weapons that could kill mass people in seconds, so
Right.
the weaponry of war changed everything, and now you're going into another war. So I even think about that trauma, where I'm sure there were plenty of men who, if they survived, they still remembered the trauma, and now they're going into World War II.
Right.
So yeah, and I like how the show showed that war doesn't only affect the men who went off to war, it affected the families with that uncertainty. So the film managed to touch upon many things when you think about it: the war, sexism, classism that Castle Brown has to deal with, because he comes from a poor family. He is educated, but still he's sort of the self-made man.
He was self-educated.
Exactly, coming against these elite, highly educated people that don't have a problem telling him, well, you're not a real archaeologist. So women's issues are all brought up. So it meant on many things. I mean, and like I said, yeah.
I did want to talk about, Miss Pretty, like, is, it's not a secret pretty early in the movie. She's diagnosed from with having had damage to her heart from a childhood illness. But the first time she kind of has an episode is she's leaving her husband's grave, right?
Yeah, I think so, yes.
And she kind of like, is like clutching her chest and having trouble breathing and all of those things. And the next scene is the doctor being like, well, you have to stop having panic attacks or something like that. And, it kind of did really discuss even today when women are diagnosed with, like, you just relax. You just need to relax more with your heart failure, because, and that's getting better. But I know, like, women are more likely to suffer from chronic immunocompromise, immune conditions, and they're proven, they're real. And doctors are like, I don't think that's a thing. And my mom is a nurse, and like she was so hardcore. Like, I remember I said someone had like fibromyalgia, and like she's loosened up a bit about this, but she was like, that's not real. Like wow, I did not know that there could be like real conditions that are diagnosed by real doctors that are just not real to other doctors and nurses.
Yeah, I think it also plays upon visible illness versus invisible, or visible versus invisible. And even recently there was an amputee, and she's also an athlete, and she was in her car parking in a handicap spot, and this woman berated her for being in a handicap parking spot. And she said, normally I don't feel the need to justify, but she said, I'm an amputee. And the woman was still going at her, saying, you have no right to park there. So even now there's that whole thing about, like, are you really sick? And
Mhm.
are some cases where the sickness may not be a physical manifestation. There's also the mental manifestation or make you, so there's both
Right.
sides. But yeah, like that, even the whole doctor scene, to be perfectly honest, when she went in there, like you really got the sense of how sterile it was. Like she was leaving the beautiful countryside and like there's almost no music or anything
Mhm.
background. It's the nurses who really look like they'd rather be anywhere but there. Like, and she's like sitting down in a chair. There's like no decorations on the walls. And then like she gets that diagnosis where it's like, and I really think if she could help not having panic attacks, that's not something she would want to bring on, but
Right. Even if it was simply panic attacks.
yeah. And I also
Like,
think yeah, I think it's also a reflection of British society, the whole like stiff upper lip, the notion of get up and carry on
right.
sort of idea that you pick yourself up, you don't let these little quote unquote little things interfere, and you just move on. And I think that's really evident in her son when he sort of gets the confirmation he needs that his mother is dying, and he's like, I know I'm told that I have to look after her. And it breaks your heart because he's a child, but he already feels the responsibility of an adult, and he realizes I can't do anything to help her. It even broke my heart when Mrs. Pretty tells her cousin, you can't die. I'm giving you an order, you can't die because someone needs to be here for my son. And I love the look of understanding he gives her.
Mhm.
Need her to say anything else. He realizes what she's telling him. I also was thinking at the same time, oh, no pressure at all. Like, how is he gonna manage this? He's also a fighter pilot. He's a pilot.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know how he'll be able to manage that, but
Mhm.
basically assures her that he'll be there nonetheless. So
And you
yeah,
never do know. Like there's no
yeah.
ending to that story, which was frustrating because like you made up the character. Come on.
I thought he did exist because I thought they mentioned him.
I
Like,
don't think so.
yeah, I got to look back because I
But
found an article about what it got right and what it got wrong. And
the story of the Pretty family
mhm.
is so interesting. Like they didn't go into it at all. He was like one of like 12 children, something like that. Some
Oh.
ridiculous number of children. And he and his brother both went to war in World War One, and his brother died, and he got back, and they owned, I think, the Pretty Corset Company,
Hmm.
and they were very well off from making pretty corsets, pretty corsets. Uh,
Mhm.
sorry, I can't say enough about that name, but and they did mention that he proposed to her on her 18th birthday, and then proposed to her like every year after. It didn't really, like, I did not get the feeling that they got married when she was like something like 40 something, and she had Robert when she was like in her 40s,
Hmm.
and the father and Robert's father died like in his 50s of like cancer, and Robert actually died like I think the senior Pretty was like 56, and Robert lived till like the 80s and died like at 57 or something,
Hmm.
which was just stunning and just so tragic, like with both of his parents dying really relatively young, and then
Mhm.
him dying, and he had 3 daughters, I believe, that
Mhm.
he left behind. So, there's just such rich stories that they didn't delve into.
Mhm.
And choosing instead to focus on, and I understand, they wanted to discuss the reality of war, and they wanted to discuss, that people died People died even not having gotten to war yet. People died training, and they had, and she mentioned they had they had old planes, and they didn't have good things to train on, and they frequently died apparently. So, but I feel like they could have done it in a different way, and then kind of leaving us hanging on an ending for a character that wasn't real. I did get mad about that. You might not notice, but I was upset about that.
Yeah, maybe it was to emphasize the whole bittersweet reality of their romance, so to speak, or at least their attraction. I don't know if I want to call it a romance.
I think it was a romance. I think it turned the corner into romance when they were hanging out at his campsite.
Yeah, well, I guess maybe that's what it was supposed to emphasize, because I remember there's a passing moment when there's this man kissing over, he goes, I may not return. So like she starts kissing passionately. He tells her, I may not return. So I kind of thought that was also the whole point. Like basically we're gonna send him off, and did he survive? Did he not? Who knows?
Right.
At least she had her moment of passion.
The one that she'd have in her she's like what, 23? She's got nothing left.
Yeah, so I guess that was probably another way of basically saying, you never know, he might return, he may not. She's had her time in the sun, and she's experienced what it means to be loved. Yeah, that's how I mean, I don't know how really invested I was in their relationship to begin with, to be perfectly honest, but
I loved Peggy. I have to say she was definitely my favorite character.
I liked when the mother, after the pilot has crashed and the mother's trying to figure out how she's gonna make her son not see it. And I know how, a man cannot resist helping a woman. She was like, and she's, oh, so I'm feeling kind of faint. And I love how Galante's like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
I feel faint. I do this thing. She was perfect. And how
Right.
she manages basically to sort of take the son away from so he doesn't see what's happened. So yeah, I mean, I definitely appreciate her. She was a much needed, another like feminine element to the film. But yeah, I don't know, like I wasn't really invested in her love story. I mean, obviously I don't want the cousin to die. I mean, I hope he, make it, and that he returns. But yeah, I sometimes wonder if the film didn't really know what direction it wanted to go in. Did it want to be biopic? Did it want to be historical? Did it want to be a romance? Even how her husband and the other gentleman get on, one would assume they have a moment before, was the husband even, I don't even think he was conscripted to fight, was he? I wasn't sure about whether he was, but
oh, I don't know. I mean, they certainly, I don't know if people were conscripted yet, like I don't know where we stood with drafts in England during the Second World War. I don't know how that happened.
So thank you once again, everyone, for tuning in. That was our discussion of The Dig on Netflix. So as always, stay safe, stay healthy, and thank you again.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.